session is already up, and I would like to welcome you to today's second day of our CHA conference, where we want to ask the question, where is the humanitarian turning point, and discuss the Zeitenwende debate and its implication on humanitarian priorities and European responsibilities. My name is Darina Pellowska. I'm research fellow at the Center for Humanitarian Action, which we like to call CHA. And I like to be your host for this first session. So welcome to this. Before we start, let me remind you here in Berlin that we have the obligation to wear a face mask, not in this room, but in the remainder of the building. So please put on a mask when you're moving outside of the room. The bathrooms are still in the basement. That's also where you find some retreat space, where in case you have to answer any very important calls or make some other conversations, maybe between the two of you or three of you. So please feel free to use them, but we hope that you will stick with us in this session and the ones that are coming today, because we have a couple of very interesting topics we want to talk about. For our online audience, this session is video recorded, so please keep your microphones switched off and also your video switched off. And if you have questions, you can post this to the chat user called Chagoda Milasute. This is my colleague, and she will be happy to feed your inputs and questions into the discussions when we start our Fishbowl sort of interactive session. And for what is more, online you have live captions available, and my CHA colleague called Technical Support will guide you on how to enable them. You can also tweet and post on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. Using the hashtag CHA22. So for this first session of today, we want to kick off the day with talking about the humanitarian priority of locally led humanitarian action and whether the Ukraine response can lead to a turning point, actually, in strengthening local actors in their delivery capacity and leadership. So with the Grand Bargain, more than 6 years ago now, 18 European countries, donor signatories, and many more European international NGOs committed themselves to the so-called localization. This included, first and foremost, providing local actors with more access to direct funding, and the target to spend at least 25% of their funds as directly as possible. Second, this included quality funding, meaning less earmarking, and more flexibility for local actors to spend those funds. And third, but not least, it included a reduction of barriers in cooperations of international actors with local and national first responders, through lessening the administrative burdens connected to international funds, and also working through pre-existing national and local structures, including coordination mechanisms, and also making investments in these and other local capacities. However, putting these commitments into practice has been proven to be very challenging. And there has been a lot of discussions and also studies on the reasons behind that. And two of the most prominent barriers that had been identified have been a perceived lack of local capacity, but also a lack of trust among local and international actors. But now that we are unfortunately seeing a humanitarian crisis unfolding in a European country, in Ukraine, a country with a lot of local capacity, national capacity, and a very strong civil society, and also pre-existing formal and informal relations in one way or the other. This is actually a humanitarian response where overcoming these barriers should be more feasible than ever before. So that's why we are asking the question today, can the European response to the Ukraine crisis actually contribute to a turning point in locally led humanitarian action? And to discuss this, I am joined today by Yuliya Sporysh from the NGO Divchata, which means girls in Ukrainian. You're the founder and director of this NGO, and you made all the effort to be here with us today, even though you have your colleagues suffering in Ukraine. So thank you for contributing your time.
Thank you for inviting me. Good morning. Happy to be there, and unexpectedly, I am only one from Ukraine right here. So I will be the voice of all Ukrainian NGO, from local ground, and also a lot of Ukrainians right now, they're sitting without electricity, without internet connection, without heating, without water. The whole my family is right now without everything, to be honest, and it was quite difficult to call them. And again, my team all over Ukraine faced the same problem. But I'm here and I'm for you. Thank you.
Yes, we actually invited several speakers from Ukraine, but unfortunately they had to stay with their teams to respond to the large needs that are just happening there. So nevertheless, we are joined online by two online guests. That's Nicola, who is the head of the Ukraine response from Oxfam in Ukraine. And hopefully also Gloria Soma will join us from the Titi Foundation in South Sudan. Nicola, we see you now on the screen. Happy that you made it. Welcome to the panel.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me here this morning.
Great that you have been able to make it. As we have heard already, there is a lot of electricity issues, so we try to cope with that in the panel. But we also want to engage much more vividly with you here, our on-site and also our online audience today. And we want to start this off with a quick poll that we prepared. So you should now be able to see a QR code on the screen just behind me and also online. And you should also be able to find a link in the chat. So if you pull out your phones and scan this QR code, you should be landing on a poll site where we ask the question of this panel, namely, is the humanitarian response in Ukraine actually a turning point for locally led humanitarian action? Of course, this is the question that we want to discuss and hopefully also answer in this panel, but we of course also want to see where you are coming from. So please participate so that we see how your views are evolving throughout this panel. And on this side, you should be able to find several answer categories. So do you think that the Ukraine response is totally, are you totally convinced that it is a turning point for locally led humanitarian action, or not at all? Please make your selections now. I don't see how the poll is going, but I hope we can see it in a minute or so. Yeah, here we go. All right. So this is somewhat no, somewhat yes. So quite divided, I'd say. So let's see if we can move a little bit closer together throughout this session. And I think there are still people clicking and finding their answer. Yeah, okay, but still a slight tendency to somewhat no. still a lot of disagreement here. So let's see where we end up after this session. To engage you even more beyond this poll only, you might already have noticed that we rearranged our setup here a little bit. So you find 4 chairs here in the audience. This is because we don't want to have a panel discussion, but we want to discuss with you, both here in Berlin and on Zoom. And this is a so-called fishbowl discussion, and I want to explain you how that works. So we have still our panelists that you can see here on the screen. Yuliya is with us, and we will have inputs from our panelists. We will hear from Nicola from Oxfam first, and after his input, we will have a first fishbowl discussion. So even while he is speaking, and even maybe now, you can take your seat in the fishbowl discussion and join us in the discussion, in the session. After that, we will have the input from Yuliya and Gloria, hopefully, and then have a second fishbowl. I will open up again for a second fishbowl. And for those of you who are online, you can also be part of this fishbowl. As I already said, you can post your questions using either the public chat, or if you prefer to stay anonymously, then you can just send a private message to my colleague Goda, who is going to introduce whatever has happened in the chat to the fishbowl later. So I think that's all from my housekeeping side. Let's turn to Nicola, starting with some reflections from an international actor. Well, Nicola, you are the head of the Ukraine response of Oxfam and are based in Ukraine. Given the commitments of Oxfam in the Grand Bargain, and of course also given the wealth of guidance that is now out there on how to implement these commitments, and given the supposedly favorable conditions to put these into practice in Ukraine, have you actually been able to doing things differently in Ukraine? Has there been some progress with regards to strengthening local actors? Nicola, over to you.
Thank you very much, and I'll try to keep this as brief. So, at Oxfam, in approaching the Ukraine crisis, we've really made a concerted effort for this to be a response that is building on and is led by local and national civil society organizations. Since 2018, Oxfam has adopted a revised humanitarian approach that centers equitable partnering and supporting local humanitarian leadership in our humanitarian programming. And since then, we have been working on adapting the ways of working, the procedures, the systems to enable a partnership-centric response. When it comes to the Ukraine response, we have been fast-tracking some of the changes that were already being developed inside the organizations, including a quicker turnaround on due diligence with leaner processes, ensuring partnership conversations rather than Oxfam assessing local actors by scoping mutual programmatic interests, understanding strengths and complementarities, and co-creating standards for a joint response. Focusing on a mutual assessment. It's not only about asking prospective partners for their policies and documentation, but ensuring that we as Oxfam are proactively sharing our own positions and relevant policies with partners for them to be able to assess whether they want to partner with Oxfam. And we've really tried to have Oxfam teams doing wherever possible the bulk of the work, reducing the burden on local organizations, reading partners' policies, identifying areas that require follow-up conversations, with an aim to make efficient use of partners' limited time. And while these adaptations were tailored to the opportunity sort of offered by the new setup of partnerships in the Ukraine response, this has been a direction of travel across the Confederation in terms of centering partnership and supporting local leadership. We have seen similar adaptation to Oxfam's ways of working in other contexts, for example, in Yemen, a response, in the Beirut blast response, and elsewhere. And the revised processes and templates that we've been using for the Ukraine response have also been shared with other programs in Oxfam to build on. The changes are really informed by a recognition that heavy assessments don't necessarily make the difference to program quality or to the timeliness or to the quality of reporting, but that investing in quality relationships can allow for a better mutual understanding, joint risk identification and risk management, more accountable partnerships, and so forth. In addition to the more standard partnerships with local organizations, in Ukraine we're also establishing collaborations with community-based organizations for micro-interventions, using group cash grants and small grants modalities. And these are, admittedly, further trying our due diligence processes and our ability to provide small cash quickly. I think we have to be very honest in recognizing that the partnership-centric approach hasn't come without its challenges. First and foremost, an overwhelming surge of funding to Ukraine, and a lot of it has come with spending targets, i.e. having to spend X amount after a certain number of months from the start of the response, which would make it a lot easier to implement directly or to subcontract to large organizations, which is an approach that many NGOs have taken. As Oxfam, we've tried to take a more conservative approach. We've held out from going big in terms of funding, trying really to focus on a principled and partner-focused approach in our Ukraine response. However, the spending pressure has been there, and it's impacted sometimes our ability, our partnerships, especially with smaller organizations that have recently scaled up their structures and activities. Meeting the spending targets has put pressure on country teams, on partners, and has at times risked deviating focus away from partnership principles and really focusing on supporting partners' programs and needs rather than focusing on donor targets. It's not the only challenge we've faced in the Ukraine response. Other examples include expectations from the newly established and, let's be honest, far from perfect UN cluster spaces to play a coordinating role, while often engagement in those spaces is not felt as relevant or value-adding for most local partners. On the contrary, discussions with our partners often show that there is a feeling from partners that these coordination spaces are not a true reflection of reality on the ground. Another key challenge is around capacity building, where across the board, multiple NGOs and UN agencies have been offering similar capacity strengthening support, often requiring their partners to participate in sessions that don't necessarily center the needs of the local actors or minimize disruption of their work. So I think while we as Oxfam, and not us only, are genuinely trying to change our role and the way of working in support of locally led humanitarian actions, I think if we want to be successful in supporting equitable collaborations among international and local actors, we have to look at a wider change in the humanitarian system, including donor requirements. Mm-hmm. Because it's not just about the entry point, due diligence. It is about the whole program cycle. It is about the reporting deadlines haven't changed and so forth. So we're only looking at the part of the humanitarian cycle, if you like, when we talk about due diligence. However, it is an opportunity to do things differently. But the key question for us is, are we willing to do the same in other responses? Are we willing to look at our double standards? Are we willing to invest the same amount of money or simplify our approaches in the same way when we're responding, for example, to the East Africa hunger crisis in Syria or in Yemen? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicola. And this is again a call to you here in the audience. This is supposed to be a discussion. So please come forward and raise your issues. Just take a seat if you want to raise a question or relate to what Nicola has just said. And I think one thing that could be of interest here is I know that there are so many international organizations based here in Germany, so I would be keen to hear, are you actually having your own projects? Are you implementing by your own structures in Ukraine? And this is not to blame you for doing this, but I just want to hear what are the reasons behind it, and how can we address this and move forward. So please share your experiences. This is an opportunity to learn from all of us. But I see Goda is already sitting here, so apparently there has been some input in the chat.
Thanks, Darina. Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, we don't have any questions in the chat yet, so I would like to encourage the online audience to raise them because there will be another round. But we would like to hear from two people who should be able to connect online. So we have Beatrice Mauconduit from the organization DEMAC and Sasha Galkin from organization R2P. Could we try to connect with them?
Yes, we already see you, Beatrice. So glad that you're here. What is your take on what just has been said by Nicola, or do you have any additional input from your perspectives, as I know you're working for a diaspora organization?
Yes, hello everybody. Actually, I'm talking today, but it should have been my colleague from Ukraine, Dina, that was supposed to talk now. But unfortunately, in Lviv, there are no electricity, so she could not connect. So I will do my best to talk on her behalf. So I'm representing the Diaspora Emergency Action and Coordination Initiative, which is facilitating coordination between the humanitarian system and the diaspora organizations that are responding to humanitarian crises. And for DEMAC, actually, Ukraine crisis has been a turning point because we could actually pilot with a liaison officer, Dina, in Ukraine and another colleague to actually improve the coordination between all the diaspora, Ukrainian diaspora organizations that were responding in Ukraine in partner with their local partners, with their local organizations. And in that sense, it's been very positive because we've seen some changes. Clusters been interested in getting information from the Ukrainian diaspora that were responding with their partners, exchanging information, and then also improving the response somehow along the way, logistically as well as concrete inputs and practical information. I mean, it's been mentioned with the capacity for a lot of organizations that raised a lot of money in the start of the crisis. It was also difficult to navigate with the system when they didn't have that so much experience with the humanitarian system. So it was good actually that that this coordination was happening and this support was given to the diaspora organizations. And it also enabled a lot of local partners to actually deliver swiftly because of the flexibility and agility of the diaspora organization that were responding to their needs and their. So it's been quite a good example of how this collaboration between the diaspora and the local partners were enabling the response in Ukraine, as well as a willingness from more and more humanitarian actors, such as from the UN with clusters, but as well as international humanitarian organizations that showed interest in learning and knowing what was happening from the Ukrainian community, because this is transnational with local partners. So more information actually are available on our website that I can share on the chat. But the support is still ongoing. There are like weekly information that has given to the organization to improve. There have been a workshop in Warsaw on winterization, how to improve the support for the coming months and for next year as well. So yeah, in that sense, it's been very positive to see those changes from the diaspora perspective as well as their partners.
Thank you so much, Beatrice. And before we turn to Sasha Galking from R2P, let me quickly turn to you, Yuliya. You now heard from an international organization, Oxfam, and from the diaspora organization about their endeavors to really engage strongly with local actors. How does this fit to your experiences?
Yeah, our experience is very good in terms of involving us, like NGO girls or in Ukrainian Divchata, to conversation about project planning and everything. But we need to understand that we are already quite big organization and we have quite good voice and we speak English. Because if you would like to talk to people on the ground and you're working with community-based NGO, they're very small, usually it's 3-5 people, and only one of them speak English. So a lot of clusters meeting and a lot of international meetings, they're going in English, and you just can join because there is no ability for translation. So it's a very simple issue. A lot of Ukrainian NGO faced every day. And sometimes, for example, we are part of child protection cluster, and we attend these meetings. In this cluster, have translation to Ukrainian, so it allows a lot of organization on the ground to join the discussion, not just sitting and listening. But if we go to the field visit and we operate in small villages or in small cities, and there is no ability to speak English, and a lot of NGOs, they send to Ukraine foreigners and don't use translators, so all this communication is just impossible. And again, they need me just to share the voice and share needs. Like we are conducting a lot of need assessment. And again, what I do, I call to my regional coordinator, okay, we need to check this one. Can you call to your guys on the ground? And we do it right here, right now. But if you would like to know the needs, you need to talk directly to the people. So again, we feel and we have this wish and willing to support Ukrainian NGO, but again, there is some weak side of it. Thank you.
Yeah. Sasha, may I turn to you? You are from the organization R2P, Responsibility to Protect, a quite strong, a quite strong NGO in Ukraine. So I suppose you have maybe other experiences. Can you share these?
Good morning, and it's a great honor to participate in such a very well-established conference. First of all, we are right to protection.
Sorry.
So, and we actually appeared well before the UN initiative Right to Protect. So that's we were first in this respect. We actually Right to Protection. It's a Ukrainian national NGO, which has been operating since 2013 in Ukraine, assisting refugees, asylum seekers, stateless population, and since 2014, displaced and conflict affected all around the country. Currently, we have 1,100 staff members, and we are providing different services to beneficiaries like cash assistance, in-kind assistance, legal aid, psychosocial help. Actually, R2P is a good example of localization in Ukraine because before 2013, we were an American faith-based organization, HIAS, and HIAS at some point realized that they wanted to pursue a strategy of localization, and they decided to get registered a local NGO. So since then, we are an independent NGO. We, of course, have our relations with our, let's say. So we, as a national NGO, we face all flows, draws of being a national NGO surrounded by international NGOs. So the major problem of, because Ukraine should have been a great showcase of a locally led response, and maybe been able to meet some of the great bargain commitments. Unfortunately, it did not happen, and it was a huge number of international NGOs parachuting with no real experience of working in countries with well-established civil society and a strong government. So, and this situation in Ukraine is completely different compared to many other contexts. So, unfortunately it has not been taken into account. So, R2P being a part of the, for instance, humanitarian country team has been observing this slow and sometimes quite sporadic movement towards a realization that Ukraine is, for instance, many some problems we face and envisage that it would be continuing. So, like a national NGO, we are supposed to compete with international NGOs providing direct services, and I fully understand that sometimes international NGOs are already prepared and can actually roll out their operations fast, but it did not happen in Ukraine again. So the local civil society was way agile than the international NGO and the UN. And according to humanitarian outcomes survey and Refugees International article recently published, so 90% of the overall humanitarian response has been led and is being led by the small, actually volunteer groups, grassroots organizations, and the lion's share of funding which is coming to Ukraine, and as Nicola said, so it was an overwhelming figure. It's the biggest flash appeal in the world, in the history actually. So, and it goes to the UN and to the international organizations. UN predominantly gets more than others, of course. And then UN is supposed to, of course, distribute it through local partners, being kind of an intermediary mostly, rather than just an implementing partner. So these are like a couple of examples of what we face here and what we experience as a national NGO. And of course, I would be happy, for instance, the international NGOs come to Ukraine with expertise, with some help to facilitate access to funding. And the donor community also is not very well prepared to this situation in Ukraine, because they do not possess mechanisms really just to follow no regrets principles or provide just to have, because civil society is a wide range in Ukraine. It's a wide range of organizations starting from very small up to more or less established big ones. So that's every and each needs some kind of different approaches, and donors, of course, are not prepared for that. Though I just seen quite recently a policy paper, draft policy paper published by BHA. So they want just really to approach this situation more systematically, because no strategy, no even full-fledged discussion has happened in Ukraine about localization. And the most striking thing is that localization discussions are going on without local partners. So it's mostly among the UN and NGOs and donors, that's it. So very much sporadic attempts have been actually observed, but that's it. So I believe after 8 months of the crisis of the war started, so I believe that it might be some more, let's say, fast and agile approach to Ukraine, and I would say more strategic and more holistic. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and apologies for mispronouncing your organization, of course. And thank you very much for these very diverse views that we already have been hearing. And as I understand, there is a very diverse local actors society, so to say, in Ukraine, and I want to also give the floor to the two people who volunteered to be part of the Fishbowl here from Berlin. And I see one person here who's actually connected to some of the previous speaker. Can you please just introduce you and tell your name and your organization?
Thank you so much. My name is Celia Gomez. I'm program officer for HIAS, so the organization that Sasha Galking just referred to, that in Ukraine became then a Ukrainian NGO. We are now also based in Brussels in our European headquarters, and I cover the Ukraine response of HIAS in, well, of course in Ukraine, but also in Poland, Romania and Moldova.
So, do you have any questions that you want to pose to to Yuliya or to the other speakers, or do you want to make another point?
Yeah, I just wanted to take up a few points that have been mentioned by the speakers before. So Nicola summarized a lot of points that we have also been observing at HIAS, the opportunities and challenges of localization. And I just wanted to add another specific point here, especially in the neighboring countries of Ukraine. We have seen that many of the civil society organizations have suddenly become engaged in humanitarian assistance to Ukrainian refugees. But then at the same time, they also continue their work they have been doing before. And it can be very diverse. It can range from supporting homeless people to supporting women and girls at risk of gender-based violence. And there we see also as an international NGO that wants to support the national CSOs, a kind of challenge when they tell us that they have been, to a certain extent, almost neglecting their previous work to support the Ukrainian refugees. They want to do both, but the donations and the funding especially comes for the Ukraine response. And there they see a kind of a conflict to their previous mandate. I just wanted to add this, and then also the point made about the local actors in Ukraine not being really integrated in this UN coordination fora. If there are any thoughts of another space that can be provided to capture the experience of the reality of the field. So I will stop here for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think we have another international organization here with us in the Fishbowl, who's also connected to another of the previous speakers. So do you want to introduce yourself, your name, your organization, and of course your points?
Yes, ma'am. So the name is Caillou Orellana. I work actually as a representative for like the Berlin playing field with the donors and politics for the organization Help from Bonn, which is a German international organization. And I really want to dive into the whole like turning point thing right now, because like basically going to the topic, I think everything's repeating itself. Like the mistakes we did in the past are repeating itself. There's the issue of personnel moving from local organizations to international organizations because of different economic and different engagement conditions, which are at some point more favorable in international organizations, in particular if they have if they are security risk averse. So, and if organizations are security risk averse, they employ local people. That's a thing. And I think this is, so I don't think that there's any significant turning point, anything that has been made different in comparison to other prominent crises. I doubt it. And I also see us as an organization, as an international organization, like, you know, I think we always advocate very much for localization, also in other contexts, and we have quite, I think, a good repertoire, a good portfolio when it comes to that. But also sometimes it's very complicated to actually follow like the whole idea of the localization to the full extent. For example, administration. Julia and I, we talked about this yesterday. Administration is a freaking nightmare, but we have to transfer some burden of administration, in particular when it comes to diligence and to procurements and all this kind of stuff. We have to transport this in whatever way, because this pressure is also on us to the local actors. And of course, if I was a local actor, I would go nuts with this stuff. So, but it's very complicated. So I think, but I really think it's not a turning point at the end of the day. Yeah.
A rather skeptical input, so to say. We have another person joining us here. Can you also introduce yourself and the organization you're joining from, and let us know your thoughts?
Sure. Does that work? Hey. Morning. My name is Josh Hallwright. I'm the acting director at the Centre for Humanitarian Leadership. And I guess one of the reflections I have is that these conversations generally focus on the international system and how the international system has to get better at localizing, and all the emphasis is on the international system, and I think rightly so. But sometimes we forget what it takes to navigate that system for a local actor, or what's required for some of these organizations to be able to know where to go to get the money, or which table to sit at to influence decisions. So before I ask a question to Yuliya, because I'm very keen on hearing the perspective of a local organization around what's required, what knowledge transfer, what support you need to be able to navigate this, a couple of small disclaimers. One, I worked for Oxfam and was involved in setting up the Ukraine response tangentially, so it's nice to see Nicola and how it's progressed. And the second one is that my organisation runs a leadership program for local and national civil society organisations in Poland and Ukraine that Yuliya is involved in. So I just want to make that very clear that this is a bit of a Dorothy Dixer. Thanks.
All right. I think, Goda, is there something in the chat coming up?
Excuse me. Yes, there is. But before I go to the questions, I just wanted to say that we have Dina online, actually.
Yes, I see her.
So how do you prefer to...
Hi, Dina. Dina is actually the colleague of Beatrice, who jumped in for her, but thankfully, Dina, you have got the internet connection now. Still having a candle, I cannot see it right now, but yes, somehow.
Yeah, I'm in Lviv. Greetings from Lviv.
Okay, so Dina, can you tell us a bit more about the current situation and how it's affecting your work and working with international organizations?
Thank you so much. Well, in general, the resilience of Ukrainian citizens is a thing that everyone is being discussing, like everywhere, discussing at the moment, because all the organizations keep working close to the front line and in all other regions. For example, in Lviv, we don't have electricity since yesterday, but most organizations keep working. Heating points where people can charge their phones are working. We have volunteers in some places, and even they're working from co-working that has a generator and have internet, don't have electricity, so can go live, but still we have Wi-Fi and we can work. And many organizations keep doing whatever they do. But of course, at the same time, it's quite complicated to get coordinated when you don't have electricity, Wi-Fi, and even mobile connection. For example, I had to drive here and my navigator wasn't working. So like if you travel to Ukraine, download an old school navigator with offline map because those online aren't working. But everything keeps working, and I think that's something that is showing very much the resilience, but also the readiness to work. And the thing that I wanted to add to the discussion, and we may continue discussing this, is that Ukraine is quite different because even in the time of war, the government keeps functioning. Everything keeps working. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's more complicated for international organizations, for example, because they have to keep with the rules of expats being present in the country, for example. We have more than 500 humanitarian organizations registered with OCHA, and this is very complicated, something to navigate, but because it's more than 500 organizations, and Ukraine has pretty strong civil society, even before the war, even before 2014. We have thousands of civil society organizations registered in Ukraine, so this is something that very differs this situation from all the.
I think now you're breaking. Okay, let's try again.
Okay, what was the last thing you heard?
Just your last sentence. I think now the internet connection seems to be back.
Super. So the thing is that the Ukrainian civil society is quite strong. It was quite strong even before the war. And even before 2014, and we have thousands of organizations registered and functioning in Ukraine. So that is very complicated, but at the same time very different from all the previous humanitarian crises.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dina, for joining, and thank you for all your great work that you are doing right now. And for me, this has been a lot of issues we just touched upon, but something which seems to be coming up again and again is that there is a strong capacity both of the government and the civil society, but then it's difficult for the international humanitarian system to tap on these and actually support these rather than pulling them into their structures, their procedures, and their rules. Yuliya, I want to come back to you because that was also some thing which was mentioned from the Fishbowl. You actually also are from an NGO that has been active before the war, doing something completely differently. So can you take us with you on your journey from what you did before, then entering the humanitarian system? How was that for you? And especially, how was it for you to be exposed in such a complicated humanitarian international environment?
Thank you, Daria. Yes, to be honest, we're a very new organization. We were set up only 3 years ago, and it was, I'm a founder of NGO Girls, and it started from sexual education events in Ukraine for teenage girls. And my main dream is to have a lot of educated, rich, and safe women around me. So that's what we did before the war. It was sexual education events and women empowering events, our main focus. And all last year, 2021, we spent with UNICEF together, and we had a big project on menstrual health, and we conducted lectures in school for boys and girls. It was extremely successful because we covered more than 100,000 kids, and it was together boys and girls in the same lecture, so we didn't divide them. But when the war started, originally I am from Irpin, and I saw on my own eyes, Kyiv, Irpin is 20 kilometers away, and then Hostomel with military airport is 10 kilometers away from me. So when the war started, I just opened my window and I saw this air battle on my own eyes, and it's like how it started for me. And we have 3 kids, and it was like, okay, we need to pack and to escape. And I just was sitting inside the bathroom and just crying and do nothing. My kids, they were very prepared. They keep everything, baggage, and they're ready. Okay, we should go. My husband did everything, but I just sitting and crying. It's how it worked with me. So, but finally, we managed to escape from Irpin on the first day in the night. And then we go to Hungary and then to Poland. So I'm originally have experience of refugee and ADP. And when we were in Poland, it was a refugee center with community-based refugee center, to be honest. And I started just with cash assistance for people from Irpin, just for evacuation. We had some money for one project. It was corporate money, and I called to my partner, can I use this money for any I want? Yeah, please do. So we started just for collecting needs from people who would like to go out Irpin or Kyiv region or whatever they want. And I just send money to people's personal account. And how it started, and then I just opened a fundraise campaign among my partners, previous partners from business side, because I have a lot of my previous boss, he's from England, and I just wrote, okay, can you support Ukrainians right now? We need some money for this and this. Yeah, okay, and we start collect money and to distribute for evacuation. At the same time, my husband started to deliver humanitarian assistance to the small villages, and how NGO from sex ed education, we turned to humanitarian resistance. And in January, we had 15 people in my team. But right now, I have 60 core team members and 250 part-time team members. So, and we are not working with volunteering. We're paying people money. We are very successful in fundraising. We have a strong partnership with a lot of big NGO, but at the same time with corporate segments, so we fundraise openly. And so for me, it's incredible development during the war, because we hire so many people, 65% of my team, it's ADP. They lost their houses, they lost their families. One of my colleagues, she lost her husband in Azovstal. We have people who are IDP and refugee twice. We're working from 15 different places in Ukraine. And my morning starts from checking, okay, what was bombed during the night? And then I should check if my people are okay. And sometimes you need to wait a few hours for some Telegram messages that I'm alive, it's okay. So it's my everyday routine, unfortunately. And yesterday when we are sitting here and listening to Berlin authorities, it was right now bomb in Kyiv, and there's no electricity, no heating, no water, and you don't know when it come back. So it's my reality. I live in this right now, and sometimes it's very funny to listen to from our partners, okay, you have delayed report. Yeah, because I'm sitting in bomb shelter with no electricity. I can't prepare Excel spreadsheet for you. Sorry, guys. And again, no, you don't understand. We need to apply for the next year fund until end of week. No, you don't understand. I'm sitting in bomb shelter. Mm-hmm. You need to be clear that we work in an emergency. It's war. It's emergency response. And some okay, you have your security policy, but I also have physical being is first, and I don't care if we will miss some deadline because it's my headache. I will write a lot of letters, sign an additional agreement, explain everything, but don't push my my people to work under pressure. And again, sometimes some people who work in Australia, sorry, it's not about you, in Australia and Canada, and we have time difference, and they write into my staff at 11 o'clock in the night, okay, we have like an emergency meeting tomorrow morning, can you jump? No, because it's like in the middle of the night for me. You just need to understand. And again, I can't call you. You didn't answer me for 6 hours. Yes, I just don't have connection. It's okay. It's war. So it's very I understand that if you're sitting somewhere and you have your own policy and your own plan, it's difficult to understand that sometimes it's just impossible in physical way to do something. Not we don't want to do something or we are not going to support you. We just can't. So realize what is going around from one perspective. And I also would like to add that a lot of Ukrainian NGO, we started 3 years ago. We have a lot of support from Feministic Network. They put a lot of efforts on our organizational development. We attend a lot of trainings, and Canadian government put a lot of money on Feministic NGO Network, and it really works because I am a result of this kind of support. And also, UNICEF put a lot of efforts to rise us from no name to well-educated NGO right now we have. But at the same time, there are a lot of questions for NGO because you try to put the same policy to us, procurement, PSEA, anti-corruption, and you have the same policies, to be honest, it's all the same, but I need to go through 5 different trainings on PSEA, and it's based on UN agency. But I have a GORA certification. Why I need to go again and again and again through this policy? Even I'm low-risk partner for a UN agency. But again, I conduct this training for my staff, but I should go to somewhere to IMC or HELP or World Vision or whatever, because you need to put me again in this policy. It's inefficiently, because for sure I know everything about child protection, child policy, because I went through due diligence many times. I fill in a lot of forms or 50 pages form of, can you assess, what do you think and how you deal with this, what is your monitoring and evaluation policy and so on. But again, each new partner come, okay, you need to attend our PSEA policy. And then you just need to, okay, just when, tell me, but I need to spend at least 3 hours of my life, and I am quite busy, and to be honest, for you, I am quite expensive for you. You are paying for all this administrative stuff, because I need to put some people from my team to this training. It means that during all this capacity building, we do nothing. We don't help people. We don't provide support. We don't make procurement. So just useless. So my question is, can you change it? Because again, we have a lot of certification. Can you just make one system that if you have one kind of certification, you don't need at least for 3 years to go to the same course? Is it doable? Very easy question. And back to your question about I'm part of CLP leadership program. And for me, as for new NGO, extremely useful, because it's you did good homework before, it's to be honest, because it started during the war. You offered this program for us for free when the war already was. So it's quite good that it's short-term 3-month course, and you can do most of your learning online using your system, using the videos, short-edited videos, everything. But again, this navigation about UNH system and donor system, it's quite complicated. Even I have PhD, I have well-educated, I'm smart, but even sometimes I crash it, how to navigate, who is the main, where is the money, whom I need to talk to apply directly for, not just go okay, apply for Ukrainian NGOs, and Ukrainian NGO will apply for international NGO, other international NGO will apply to 3 other international NGO, and finally, where is the money? Maybe I can apply directly? Why I need to use all this line? Because it's loss of translation, loss of time, loss of money, all this administrative stuff. If you would like to do localization, okay, I'm here. Just let's do localization. And right now, a lot of eco projects, Ukrainian Humanitarian Fund, a lot of projects from from other big donors. And again, like me, like NGO, I am part of 3 different my international partners. I apply in each of 8 program with the same activity, or more or less the same. So it means maybe I can apply directly. And the question is.
Yeah. Very good points, and I see more or less 4 big topics coming up in that discussion. And one very big one is, of course, the risk transfer. Looking at Dina, who is joining us with the candlelight from Ukraine, and you telling your stories from the first days in the war. So you bear a lot of psychological burden, but also security burden, and so you are faced with security risks and risks of life, but then you're confronted with your international partners who are mainly dealing with due diligence risks, and that's their main topic they are concerned about. So I heard that many INGOs were actually suspending their operations in the very first days of the war, and then volunteer organizations were picking up, and then the international actors trying to connect with those, especially for visibility, because then they wanted to show that they are somehow operative, to raise funds. So this is not only risk transfer, but actually also using. I don't want to say abusing, but using the locals who are actually risking their lives because they refrain from taking these risks.
I have a lot of stories around it. So, okay, when the war started and we started delivering money, and we had a few projects with big international donors, but our money was frozen. We can't use it because it was programmed by other activities. So I started just fundraising corporate money for helping people, and during 3 or even 4 weeks, no one answered my calls, no one answering my mails because it was disrupted. And even if we are talking about like helping people with shelters, with food, with hygiene, okay, where is and where is the Red Cross? Where is, like, it was winter, there is no heating station. Ukrainian business start to help. Ukrainian business opens their warehouse. My partners, they just, okay, they host people in their warehouse. They bought mattresses, blankets, everything in one day. It was delivered very fast. But where is this big amount of money for Ukraine come? And even later, no one would like to pay these people for their job. And if we go to the front line right now, for example, Kharkiv Oblast and the Kherson region is deoccupied, and we jump to the car and send like basic food and basic hygiene kits to the deoccupied territories, and we saw what they especially need. But then when we asked our partner, come with us, no, we have security policy, it's impossible. Okay, but how you can like conduct needs assessment, and then okay, but Yuliya, you shouldn't go to the front line if you don't want. It's not like my willingness, I want or I don't want. If I'm operating in Ukraine and supporting Ukrainians and Ukrainian people suffering after the occupation, so it's not a question if I can or could or if I will, I just go it. And it's like very different between, and again, right now, a lot of partners conduct new appeal for Kherson region, but no one can operate here because no electricity, no heating, everyone destroyed, every day bombing. So, but again, where is the money? Just give money at least for fuel, at least for basic food. Like there is complicated story with local authorities, especially in Kherson region, but there is a lot of volunteers, a lot of NGOs, and we collaborate with a few NGOs who support kids with disabilities. And they are continuously asking for basic needs, for basic building material, just to cover something from the rain, and nothing. Like again, Ukrainian business like Rosetka, Nova Pochta, Kyivstar, they are here, they set up, they restore infrastructure and help people. But a lot of like nations, Red Cross, where are you?
Yeah. And maybe that's also turn to another context and flying across continents. I hear we are also joined by Gloria Soma now, who is the director of Titi Foundation in South Sudan. We've been discussing extensively the cooperation between international organizations and organizations in Ukraine. Gloria, I'm so glad that you are able to join us. We had actually hoped to have you here with us, but unfortunately you are only online as well. Thank you for having the time for us. So hearing all these struggles, inputs, and learnings, how does this resonate with your experiences? Is it something you are familiar with, or do you see some progress in Ukraine?
Well, my name is Gloria Soma. I hope I'm audible enough.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm the executive director of the Titi Foundation, which is a women-led organization based in South Sudan. I hear the conversation that our colleagues from Ukraine are going through, especially on the localization discussions. I mean, it's the same situation we face day in, day out in South Sudan context. We've been in crisis for over 30 years, and not much solution really through the humanitarian architecture that is coming substantively out of, all the interventions, out of the millions that have been poured in. When you talk about localizing, and ensuring that the local communities take charge of interventions, it's always, oh no, we have already designed this program with our headquarters and with the donors specifically. They're not about to change anything. So it's basically imposing what they think is right for us on the ground to implement. And as a foundation, at the moment, what we decided to do is that we no longer want to, listen to this kind of theories, and we're taking it upon ourselves as an individual institution that we only need to work with like-minded donors, like-minded supporters that want to improve the welfare of communities within our context, within our country. And so with that, sometimes comes the hard decisions of deliberately refusing, to accept funding from partners, because I cannot keep implementing something that has been imposed. Unfortunately, it is also a recycle of what they thought 8 years ago would be working. But to date, I'm unfortunately in my 30s, and I don't see any progress in my country based on, what they think is recurring structures and ways of working. But it's no longer working. It's actually worsening the situation. So I think it's high time really that, the international community, donors specifically, be able to start listening to the grassroots communities. I think I've been seeing the conversation on listening for a very long time, and sometimes it gets so boring that, you keep making so much noise. But I think the noise is still very necessary, and there's need for us to really be able to listen to the different innovative ways in which local actors think they can bring about sustainability, they can bring about better development of programs within their communities. Because at the end of the day, if aid is meant to disable communities, then I don't think it's worth it. But if we wholeheartedly and genuinely want to help communities, it's time for us to listen to their solutions and solutions that they think will be able to support them move the next step forward. And we should also keep desisting. There's a notion when it comes down to most times the multilateral organizations and NGOs, people want to keep holding to power. And, power is basically the resources. And this is what is a huge disabler for, a lot of the national organizations. And I think if donors can support us, disable a chunk of that power, then I think we'll be creating, a favorable solution to also ensuring that we are realizing the localization, agenda. Otherwise, it remains a song that we'll keep singing for the next couple of decades moving forward. Thank you so much, Darina, and over to you.
Thank you, Gloria. And listening to you and what Yuliya said before, it appears to me that it comes back to the capacity strengthening approach. And hearing from Gloria that you are invited in trainings over and over again to be able to comply with the international system, I am asking myself, and this question goes to the audience as well. I see there are more inputs, so please, if you have already taken your fishbowl seat, please free it to people that have not had the possibility to talk yet. I see there is much input and much interest. So I'm asking, especially the international NGOs that are here, a little bit provocatively, is it maybe also about your capacity, building your capacity in working together with different contextualized organizations, people, civil society? So that's maybe one question to you. But I see that we have more people here. But let me give Goda the floor first, who has been waiting so long for having her say in taking up the questions from the chat.
Yes, thank you, Darina. So the chat has become very lively in the meantime. We have a few inputs that I would like to read to you. So the first one is from Chiara, who says that an open letter by 150 local organizations responding to the Ukraine humanitarian crisis raised the aspect that they should be able to deliver aid on their own terms by also incorporating principles of solidarity and resistance. Mm-hmm. And the question goes to Nicola. Has this also been a topic of discussion in your partnerships? Another input comes from Smruti Patel, who says, I would like, and I quote, "I would like to know why we always assume that local actors do not have capacity and waste so much resources duplicating training. We have seen this in different emergencies, so do you agree that there is not much of a turning point as we are doing business as usual?" Smruti also adds that there is a real move of international organizations to register as national organizations and calling themselves national organizations. This shrinks the space of homegrown organizations. They also compete for financial resources, HR resources, coordination, and policy space at the table. So even those who say they are committed to localization and the grand bargain and the C4C, they continue to take up space and resources. Another input, maybe I'll just go through all the inputs. Another input comes from Katrin Truszewski from HELP. Katrin says, INGOs are often those directly receiving the funds and transferring to local partners. Often regulations and rules, especially procurement rules of donors, which normally differ from donor to donor, are a big challenge, especially in crisis countries like Ukraine, with a lot of local partners new in this kind of project management, as they are changing from grassroots to organization or just changing from their original field of business to humanitarian aid. Additionally, it is a big challenge for the INGOs and local partners if the beneficiary country has its own regulations and rules. How can we improve the situation and cooperation with the local partners in the field? Another input comes from Bianca from ADRA organization, and Bianca says the NGO letter Chiara referred to and the FTS showing how funding mainly went to international actors instead of local or national actors does not seem to reflect a turning point. As we know, with money comes power. Do any local actors have had direct contact with donors like Germany or ECHO? Is there a way of direct communication? Shouldn't that be the solution? And the last point comes from Dina, who added to the discussion, let's not miss the point that most of the cluster meetings started to be bilingual only a few months ago in Ukraine, and since 2015 there were no sphere standards translated to Ukrainian.
Wow, this is a very lively chat, and I see it's becoming lively here as well. However, I just wanted to point to some thing which I find very noteworthy, because that's how we see how these different due diligence regulations and rules and procedures that you are confronted with from different international actors, from different donors, is actually also leading to a lack of coordination and vice versa. So we are duplicating existing coordination mechanisms, existing structures, because it's not possible to integrate them because of the due diligence. And I'm also very glad that the open letter has been mentioned, and I encourage everybody who has not read it, maybe we can put the link in the chat. Those of you who've referred to it, it's a very worth read for everybody engaged in strengthening local actors. Looking at the time, we just have 10 minutes left, and we have, I think, 5 more input givers here in our fishbowl. So maybe just start from the left-hand side. Can you introduce yourself, your name, your organization, and your points?
Thank you. This is Muhammad Ahmad from IDEA organization, a local organization, and we have been working since long in the conflict emergency. So my first point is, if it is a risk shifting or risk sharing. If the risk has been shifted to the local organization because the international is not working, it is not a turning point. If the risk has been shared with them, if there is a duty of care has been taken care of, like if the people who are the frontliner, their health and their life is ensured, so then this is a turning point. If the salaries are equitable, then it is a turning point, otherwise not. This is in a very much traditional system, because the salaries are very low to the front line, for the frontliner who are facing the risk. So this is the old traditional model, so it's not a... If there is a retention policy, if the NGOs are not inducting staff from the local NGOs, and that's how the local NGOs cannot retain their capacity after a lot of training. So if there is no such policy of compensation or like any moral obligation, so this is not a turning point then. If ICR has not been shared equally with the local actors, then it's not a turning point. If the local actors are not at the decision-making table, so then it is not a turning point. It is very much traditional system. So you can answer if some of these are there in, while working in the Ukraine crisis, if the local NGOs are provided with all these opportunities or not. So
I would like to add very short. You know, some our partners just told me that I'm too expensive. NGO Girls is too expensive. NGO, we are not going to work with you because you put high salaries to your budget. Yes, of course, because NGO stolen my people. Because you pay triple price on ordinary Ukrainian salary. And if I would like to have sustainability in my NGO, I need to cover all expenses. And no one is ready to cover the insurance, to be honest. Even no one is ready to cover rent payment near front line. It's again like, why you need office in Dnipro? Sorry, but you would like me to operate in Eastern region. So it's like, obviously, I need to rent some space, at least for house or something like that. And again, we lost some tenders just to price, because we have like cheaper offer. Okay, sorry, I am not going to work cheaper because I know how good I am in delivering the results. So sorry, we will try to find other money. But it's the issue. There is an issue because NGOs still thinking that we are like, I don't know, wild country in some way, and we don't understand how this like money making working, and why I should like
pay less to my people if they know how hard and how dangerous their work are.
Mm-hmm. Yes, was that all from your side?
Exactly. I have a long list, but like it is not a turning point for the humanitarian sector. Yeah. Let's be honest with the...
Rather skeptical views. Let's see.
Hi, I'm Frederick, working for the World Food Programme, but I'm not here to discuss Ukraine operations because I'm not covering it, so I'm not able to talk about it, or I shouldn't. For me, the discussion shows a very important, or there are two important aspects that I saw in the Ukraine response. It is not an ordinary response. So a lot of actors were struggling by very strong local organizations, but also by a government that actually cares about its people and tries to help them and make the best out of it. So this is an aspect that when you talk about this localization in the context of Ukraine, I think there is this is very different to a lot of other emergencies that we respond to, because there are partners that we can work with. And this took time for a lot of organizations to adapt to, was my impression from the far distance. And then the second point is on the question of how that I raised yesterday and that Ed made on a podium yesterday around the incentive structure. When you talk about localization, everybody agrees that this is a good idea. But then you have a system on the donor side, as we discussed yesterday with Ms. Potzel, about the lack of capacity in the Foreign Office to actually handle this kind of things. Because that means that you interact with a lot more actors, a lot more complications. And it's not about SIA trainings, because I've done those a lot myself, and the learning curve stops at some point. But there are other needs that need to be covered, as you rightfully mentioned. So the question is there the right infrastructure on the donor side to actually deliver on promises given around localization? Are they able to make decisions, allocate resources to the right thing? And yes, the colleague from Oxfam said there's a lot of training offers, and there is a need for training that should be part of it. But what is the actual implementation structure that comes between the Foreign Office and local organizations? Because the officers in the Foreign Office are not able to cover it. So who does the administrative work? Who does the investment in the common goal of localizing aid? And this is, this is just a consideration around the actual feasibility of the promises being made. And I think there's a big gap between the good idea and the actual delivery of it.
Yeah, I think we are again talking about capacities, this time about donor capacities. Unfortunately, we have no donor representative here, but we have several international organizations. So let's turn to the next in the row, who is actually from an international organization. Can you tell us your name, your organization, and maybe respond to some of the issues and share your views?
Respond to. So I will forget my question. So my name is Ole Engelbrock, working for Caritas Germany. And actually, if I'm honest, at the beginning of the session in the poll, I was answering no, it's not a turning point. But listening to Gloria's comments and also to your last ones, Yuliya, now I would have the feeling to say it is a turning point in localizing aid, not with regard specifically to Ukraine, but in general, because local actors say no. They claim their right to reject tenders or to say, no, I don't work with this donor if he imposes things to me or with these INGOs, but I choose like-minded donors or INGOs. And if local actors gain the confidence, the ability, the capacity, however we call it, to say no, to reject, and to choose their partner, then this is a turning point. Because before it was much for tendencies. Oh, okay, Caritas Germany is the one giving me money. I will do whatever they ask, or I say what they want to hear. I learn it, what they want to hear, so I will also say it. And if I hear now local actors, claiming the right to reject, whoa, for me it's a turning point. So there were improvements in the last 8 years. Let's also be honest about that. Another comment I would just like saying, the colleague from Haya said it before, like in Moldova and also Ukraine, many civil organizations, they were doing humanitarian action quite rapidly. And you made very, very valid points, which we really need to work on with, harmonizing the due diligence and not so much capacity building, because you are experts already. But I have a question, if maybe also later at the tea, you can share your impressions about the relevance of humanitarian principles to civil society organizations in Ukraine. Is it an obsolete framework for you, talking about neutrality, for example, or does it have a relevance also for civil society actors in Ukraine? Because I see a huge relevance still in it.
Yes, and we heard this question before, directly posed to Nicola, and who's also raising his hand. Of course, you want to respond. I see that. I will give you the floor. And also, Dina, I see your hands, no worry. But let's just hear the two more inputs from the Fishbowl here. And maybe if we don't have time, this goes to all of you online. Both Nicola and I hope also Dina are staying with us for some more 45 minutes. In separate breakout rooms which will not be recorded, where you can engage with them, chat with them, post all the questions, and hear more from them. So this is just a little disclaimer from my side. There is more time, so don't worry. Let's move on. The next input giver, your name, your organization, and your input, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and thanks for this great discussion. Matthias Amling from Welthungerhilfe, German INGO. Many things have been said, so I don't try to just double it. But as an INGO, I feel I really liked the discussion around capacity building, and not for the local or national partners, but for the INGOs, for the donors. I think that's really at some points lacking. For Welthungerhilfe, the idea of locally led response, localization, it's very at the heart of our strategy. At the same time, I feel we are at the starting point in really learning that, and I feel that's similar to many INGOs, and that will also be not an easy road to go. It will take time, and I think we have to be honest, and we have to find kind of transition strategies towards a role in which we, if it's an intermediary organization or whatever role is the best, then we have to discuss that with partners. We have to get to that point, and that will take time, I think. And I mean, we are involved in some good initiatives in a project with Ahmad, with Ole together, where we try really to get together 40 partners that recently met in Bonn and discussed these things and tried to learn from each other. At the same time, part of the START network that is also trying to decentralize its structures more and more, trying to have hubs in countries that are with at least 50% of national actors, so at least more locally led. I think that's all. There are things that start and they're on the way, but we are really at the beginning, and therefore the initial question of a turning point, I would say no, it's not a turning point yet. It's maybe we did maybe this response in Ukraine was in some parts better than in other situations. We have to analyze why. We heard a lot about, of course, the capacity that is there, the government capacity, the local authorities, the civil society capacity, and then we have to say in a second analysis, what can we take from there and transfer to other situations. And the last thing, I would definitely also agree with donor capacity. I mean, we heard yesterday from Ms. Potzel and also in the beginning from Ms. Baumann, there's no problem with the staffing of the Federal Foreign Office. I would disagree with that. That's not the case, and we have to be honest about that. Thank you.
Yes, it's very interesting that you're pointing to the need of time to improve, but I think people on the forefront really don't see that there is time. This, I think, is a little bit of a discrepancy in the different views. The final one in this fishbowl round, please, your name.
Okay, my name is Samuel Zode Hagos, and I'm currently working with German Center for Integration and Migration Study. I would like to be a little bit, thank you for the opportunity, but I would like to be a little bit critical. And then I would like to characterize this effort as a kind of normalizing and then kind of ensuring the continuity of the current humanitarian architecture through notion of localization. Let me give some example. For example, we are also talking about capacity. And since we are looking at this capacity through neoliberalism lens, we are saying that, oh, Ukrainian, they have more capacity. So the others in the other areas, since we don't have capacity, then we have the opportunity to localize in Ukraine, to the locals to take the leadership. And the other thing is we are also talking in the direction of the critics of the humanitarian architecture is about disciplining, control, and then transferring responsibility and normalizing process. And then we are repeating, for example, like beneficiaries, which is, and also empowerment. We are trying to fine-tune our vocabularies also to fit to the existing governance system, the existing architecture. And then we are also trying to kind of the local organization trying to squeeze in to the existing mode of delivery, because we are saying efficiency, we are saying accountability, which is based on this neoliberal political architecture. So how do we claim that now we are at a turning point where we are trying to normalize the current mode of operandi, the current mode of structure, the current practice, which is disconnected from the notion of giving a voice to local community to take action, to take responsibility, to define their own priority, to be actively shape the whole humanitarian governance. We are trying to impose, but not allowing the grassroots movement to shape the current architecture. Thank you very much.
A very important disrupting input indeed. I'm very sad that we cannot take it up because we are already over time. But as I said, we still have 45 minutes of active break, and I would encourage you to grab some drinks and stay in this round, continue the discussion as we have the possibility. Noticing the time and still remembering that I promised you to give the possibility to you online to react. Nicola and Dina, do you have some final takeaway for this discussion, some final input? And I want to encourage all of you here in the room also to note down your key takeaway and your key input to the little pieces of paper that you should have found on your seats, because we are collecting them on the pin board over there. We want to really learn and also collect your insights for also our own learning. So, Nicola, let's maybe start with you. There has been the question about solidarity. Is Oxfam responding in Ukraine solidarity-based? Or do you want to share any other final note?
There are a lot of takeaways from this discussion. I think, yes, I'd like to get back to the direct question, and then I have another takeaway. On the direct question of resistance and solidarity, I mean, it's not a tension, I have to be honest, we're experiencing with the organizations we're working with in Ukraine. Having said that, well aware of the debate in Ukraine, of the open letter, of the points that have been raised. So I think for us, this is an ongoing discussion. I think some of us may approach it differently. For us, it's a bit of a nuanced conversation in the sense that this has implications for us in other contexts as well. So whatever position we take on Ukraine for reasons of consistency and if we like global equality, we need to be prepared to take everywhere else. So I think we're still thinking through the implications of what that means for us if we look at it from a wider perspective beyond Ukraine. And then I think it also needs to be broken down, because I think what we are absolutely certain about is that we're not neutral on the principles, on the rights, on the international legal frameworks. Does that extend to not being neutral in a conflict is then the big question and the big topic of discussion for us. And the other takeaway for me is on capacity building. I think we need to stop talking about capacity building, start to talking about exchange and mutual learning. Mm-hmm. I think Sasha from R2P raised a very valid point that international NGOs themselves are struggling to adapt to a context which is very different from those in which we normally work, with a well-functioning government, with established systems, and I mean, we've all seen the response, with a strong civil society. So we need to rethink. Mm-hmm. It's not a one-directional capacity building process. It is a mutual learning. And if you're really working on localizing response, then it comes out of joint discussions.
Thank you, Nicola. Dina, please, if you have one last thing that you can share with this very diverse audience, what would that be?
I think we have heard a lot of many organizations trying to negotiate their version of how this should be implemented. Like international organizations have their vision and local organizations have their vision. But I work in project management for many years, and there's a thing called Skyness framework, which tell us that there are 4 types of worlds that we can live in. One is obvious, second is complicated, third is complex, and fourth is chaos. And I think that it's quite obvious that the situation that we are in, not only Ukraine, but globally, it's more of a complex and chaos than obvious and complicated. And the answer to that is that we have to be very flexible and we have to adjust and adapt every day. There is no unique rules and tools that can be applied in all the contexts when there is chaos. You have to adapt, you have to act, then analyze the results and act again. And I think that we have to remind to ourselves that every day and remember that communication, coordination, and cooperation is the key to success in this environment. Thank you.
Thank you for this final plea for more flexibility. Last from our online speakers is Gloria, last but certainly not least. So what do you take away from this discussion, maybe in just one sentence, as we are already 8 minutes over time? If you can be brief, that would be much appreciated. Gloria.
Thank you, Darina. One is that the conversation of capacity building needs to move into capacity sharing, because we all do have.
Now, Gloria just dropped off. Are you back again? Well, unfortunately, she is not, but she will be in the breakout rooms anyway. I hope she will be back very soon. So you will have the possibility to exchange with her in the remaining 40 minutes of online exchange. This leaves me with you, Yuliya. You have heard so many different voices now. What is your key takeaway from these discussions? Is the Ukrainian response a turning point for localization, or would you rather disagree?
I think that we're still far away from localization, but we need to do the best and to raise a voice and to be very active and to be included in any decision making about the humanitarian response in Ukraine. And again, we should be involved in all this decision making. Mm-hmm. That's my key point.
Very brief. And now to close the session, we've been discussing this question over and over again. Let's turn back to the online poll that we had. So please pull out your phones again. And in the chat, please click on the link. We are very keen to see whether we were able to change your minds in either one way or the other. And whether we could bring you to either more a positive or more of a negative view on whether the Ukrainian response is a turning point for locally led humanitarian action. I see many phones being pulled out here. I think in the chat there is also the link. And there is the same answer categories from 0 to not at all to 5 totally. So what would be your answer? And I'm very keen to see the answers. Wow, more people participating now. Still somewhat decided. Even 50 people now participating. Well, there is still a very divided group here. I think this gives us more room to discuss in the active break that I already announced. Please remember to take notes of your key takeaways and pin it to the pin board, which is just outside the room. In the chat, you can post your key takeaways, of course, as well. And thank you, Yuliya, for being here. And let's have a very engaging active break. Thank you for the very vivid discussion.
Thank you very much.